I would like to just start with a comment regarding the collective practice and the leadership versus the architect as kind of singular auteur. This notion of some genius or something that comes out of a single person. I think what happened, I started off with, in my education, with several professors which somehow communicated to me this enormous mission that we call architecture, which is beyond your capability. And now at 7 years old, I feel more so. And that mixed audience there for the young ones, for everybody, it's unattainable. You can never master it. It's impossible. It's too complex. It's too changing and growing, and it humbles you as a person. But it's incredibly rewarding to be involved in this thing we call architecture, which is so much bigger than you, that you attempt to just take some part of it and push it forward, depending what you call forward, which is a philosophical question, but you try to move it in some way and make it, let's say, contemporary. And out of that comes sort of a commitment of the collective nature, and there's no question that I'm a leader. I have ideas that I'm the captain in a way. I'm guiding this kind of the ship we have, and but it's an act that connects with huge amount of creativity, and my interest is to somehow shape the ideas and the information that kind of moves through my studio, and it's also has a huge role to play in my teaching. I put together a talk tonight, which is in some ways completely ridiculous. It's about 400 images, and I'm going to take you through 4 decades of work, and it came out of the book that I just came out with, the one that's on the table. It's the M book, and it's the last 5-6 years of work. And I started to write explanations of what that was, and I realized that I was just repeating myself, and that we've written quite a few books, and I don't know, I do a lot of books because I love books, and I'm a dinosaur. I recognize if you're under 30 or 35 or 40, I'm one of the last alive that actually likes the written book, and I just love them as a thing, and so I make them just for the fun of making the thing, if nothing else. And I like making stuff, and it includes books. And but I was starting to write this, and I realized I had nothing to say that's like really going to help you understand the work. And then it's at this point in my life, it's the result of thinking about architecture and making somewhat radical changes over 40 years. And I started quite young. I started my practice when I was 27 years old, and I started SCI-Arc, or I was one of the 6 people that started SCI-Arc at the same age. And then part of that was default. Maybe there's some of you that are like me. I was a terrible employee. I wasn't a very good student either. And I needed to go on my own, and now I watch my sons, and I have a son that's actually a bit like me, and he's an autodidact, and he doesn't work he needs to be on his own, and it seemed like I was like that. So I really started because I had nothing else to do. I was having a hard time really as an employee. And because of that, I was asking really basic questions, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I had no idea what architecture was. And for those of you that know something about architecture, the 60s was more or less the end of what we called the modern movement. And it was a very coherent set of ideas that started with certain major characters, and they're Mies van der Rohe and Aalto and Corbusier, these people that were coming into their own in 1920. And there was a complete breaking from classicism, just to make it simple. And there was a complete new thinking that was parallel to the ideas of Darwin, Einstein, Freud, etc. What was taking place in art with Picasso and Braque and on. And there was this radical kind of shift, which happens every 500 years or so, right? And architecture was part of that. Well, by the time I came along, it had pretty much exhausted, and there was a challenge to that. And that was my generation. And we pretty much rejected most of what our professors were talking about. And I had very, very good teachers, actually very, very famous architects that I didn't really even recognize at the time as an 18, 19, 20-year-old. But we were very kind of headstrong, and we're moving in another direction. And so we're starting in a way from scratch. Anyway, I'm going to take you through a journey, and also, let me say something else. I'm also realizing that it really doesn't make sense to describe a building in terms of kind of how it operates, because it's actually kind of boring. You really, a school, a medical center, a research center, it's a kind of a technical conversation, and it'd take kind of an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours per building, and do you really care? And I'm not sure it even matters, really. And so what I'm really trying to do is I'm going to just take you through what we're thinking about, kind of what the ideas were. And I would do it if I was a painter or if I was a writer. I'm just going to take you through, and this is what we're kind of struggling with at the moment. This is where the ideas came from. And I'm going to try to just form the ideas around the work, and I'm going to move at a speed of light. At the same time, the work is it's going to look like something random, because in a practice of architecture, you're beholden to the world outside of you. You have no choice of where you're going. People call you, and you have a client. And it's a little thing, a big thing, a thing in this country, a thing in another country. And so it appears very random. And what I'm trying to do is constantly kind of steer my way through that in terms of some sort of a coherent idea that makes sense, that we're trying to develop who we are as architects. And we do it through this kind of non sequitur kind of relationship. Make sense? Right? And these things come in. So you're going to look at this, and it's going to bounce around a lot of it. And I'm going to kind of glue it together the best I can in terms of kind of how I'm trying to think about this particular project as it shows up in the office, because I have no control of how that happens. You can do that in the academic world. You can control your life and look at certain kinds of problems. But in the practicing world, it just takes place as it takes place. And it's much more contingent. So here we are, and it's really the late 70s. Like all architects starting on their own, I get this little tiny house in Venice, and it's a little addition on top of a garage. And we decided it's so simple, we're going to redraw it, and we draw it like a kit of parts, and we take it apart, and we don't do working drawings. We do it like we were making models when we were 8 years old, and then we show it kind of how it goes together. And it's interesting kind of beginning, because this is not how we make buildings. And 20 years later, I'm going to kind of show you how we do this again. And it's vernacular. It's a house that looks like a house with a roof and windows. And then I think this is right after the Lunar Landing Module, and I'm probably also just came back from Washington and the Aerospace Museum, and I'm looking at people like Richard Rogers, and I'm the Archigram boys, etc. And I have no idea where I'm going. And so this one is this kind of high-tech thing, and it's made out of metal, and it's kind of smooth. And again, it's a little tiny house in Venice. And I'm learning how to make things, and I'm trying to figure out who I am in terms of a language. I'm trying to figure out what is the language of architecture that represents the nature of what we're doing. And the focus is in language. And it's not about performance, because there is no performance. These are simple little things that'll come way, way later. And then we got a commission to do a bit of a larger house. And I came out of a planning background. I worked for Victor Gruen, and that planning got me interested in urban ideas. And instead of a house, it was really the house was taken apart in three things. I remember I talked about it as village clutter, and I'm making a little town-like thing. So the house isn't a single thing, it's a series of things you move through. And it begins kind of an urban idea, and then it's starting to kind of touch the ground in a certain way, and there's a relationship between the pool, the outside, and the inside, which is all part of Los Angeles. But there's three things that are touching each other, and I'm making kind of urban space. And then we get our first kind of larger house commission, residential commission, and we're back to kind of connecting two things. And we were kind of now interested in the social structure of a house. We had this interesting client of the husband and wife, and they were absolute opposites. One wanted a little conventional cottage, one wanted a really modern metal box. We said, okay, one gets the box and one gets the little house, and we jam them together. And we're still trying to figure out a language, et cetera, where we're going. We're trying to make things, and we're getting really fussy about the construction of things. And then I do a series of drawings, and the drawings came after the house was done. For architects, drawings are the way we think, the way we kind of sort our world out visually. And this was a kind of a cathartic thing. And you can see that if you read sections, it was a complex little house, and it sat on about, I think it was 25 different levels. Every room had its own level. And we were already kind of interested in a certain level of complexity and a spatial complexity, where as you moved around the house, you really remembered that each room had a really specific kind of look and feel and sense, et cetera. And I'm trying to figure out where I want to go, because I'm not happy with the project. And I'm uncomfortable with it, and I recognize that. And I'm trying to get myself out of this problem. And so the last drawing, I leave myself in it, I leave the instrument in it, because I'm clear that these are drawings, and I want them didactic. They talk about me thinking and drawing and looking at this thing. And then at the beginning of '80, several things are starting to happen. The computer shows its first little tip, and we get a little Mac 1. I think it had 250 megs. Can you imagine? Right? And I'm immediately trying to take it apart and put the hand in it. I'm not comfortable with the mechanics. And we do this. This is a kind of a sketch of an organization that led to another little house we did for one of the teachers' classics at UCLA. And we're really embedded in making stuff. That LA, like most of the country, really low, especially in the residential area, really low-tech people that have no idea what they're doing. You can't find real carpenters, you can't find skilled people, very, very difficult to find. And we're going, we have to take over. We literally made the framing model. We took control of that because we were interested in the final product, which is the mechanics, the real look of the thing. And I was interested in making the wood and the pieces very exact and very perfect, because I was interested in the constructional processes. And then we're starting now, we're getting the first cafe, I think, and we're expanding our knowledge of construction. And we're making things as much as we can, not out of generic stuff. No stucco, no wood frame, using much more complicated materials. And we're starting to work with steel, et cetera. And we're in the shop now. This is a part of a restaurant. It's an orrery. And it's moving and it lets light in, and it's a kind of a clock device. And this is another one which is part of an AC condition, and we're making the exhaust piece into kind of a piece of kind of equipment that has its own character. And this is a part of a children's play area for a carcinogenic cancer center for children. And it holds a tree, and it's we're making these things with a certain intensity we can't get in the buildings. And again, for the young people there, I'm trying to take what I can do and push it as a young architect, and I can't control a lot of the environment, and I'm trying to take something that I can completely control as an artist and make something of value. And then this is a clothes shop, and we made a loom, or an idea of a loom. And we were finding clients that let us play a bit. And we had no interest in the reality of the commercial, could care less about the project. I was interested in the art of architecture and the culture of architecture, and we could find alignments with these people because they're very simple. And it ended up that we were finding an audience that a lot of people found these things interesting, and we're getting good feedback from our clients. So it ended up working. And then because of that, we're making objects, we're making furniture, and we're continually expanding our knowledge of construction. We're casting, we're experimenting with all kinds of the characteristics of how these materials work, and it's leading us to other kind of thinking of design. And then here I am, and I'm in Tom Farage's shop. I'm still working with him. I'm designing my own house right now. We've worked together for 35 years. And we're working much more like sculptors. We're in the shop making, bending, understanding the relationship of materials as it has to do with the art of architecture. And then out of that, in terms of a broad artistic idea, came notions of fragments and elements and pieces of things that were not finished. And this was the model we made of a part of a house. And we made just kind of the intense part. And I'll never forget, we looked at this and we went, oh my goodness, we're interested in this more than we are in the building. We like the unfinished part. And then it reminded me, I think I got into architecture because of something I saw when I was maybe 10, 11 years old in Chicago. And it was a frame going up in the city of a building. And then after that, as a student, buildings are really beautiful at 80 or 90% when they're not finished. And they're still dynamic, and you can still see the guts of them. And I just love that. And we were into that kind of idea that, no, let's show something that's unfinished, that's still partial, and that's in a way still under construction, which is a certain kind of dynamicism in a way. And it was leading us into all kinds of now formal ideas. And it wasn't deconstruction, it was actually fragmented construction. I had no interest in taking things apart. I have interest in making things, but I don't finish them. And it led to this language that we started now becoming known by, because at this point now, I guess we had some sort of an established language that people recognized this work was Morphosis Architects, because we'd established this notion of these series of pieces that are somewhat connected, somewhat disconnected, all in relationship to one another. And it started leading to all kinds of elements in buildings, whether it's a residence or whether it's a school, that these elements started becoming kind of part of a language. And then finally it kind of gelled in a building. And this is the 6th Street house, which was originally my house. That was a project. And now it's made of a series of these elements that no longer connect in a traditional way. There's no symmetry. There's no traditional glue. They're made out of an association of these objects that connect together, and you connect them by their relationship to their mechanics, et cetera. And then again, the buildings were all now starting to, this is a larger house up in Santa Barbara. They were all made of these different elements, all fragments of things. And at the same time, we're pursuing the ground-building relationship. It's getting more and more connected, that we don't see the building as an object sitting on the ground. The ground is getting more active, so the pool is moving into the house. Everything is connecting between exterior and interior, which of course is a tradition in California that we followed with all the architects who were my instructors. And then what would be important to kind of look at, because this is going to show up 10 years later, we're doing competitions of work we couldn't get. So we're invited to a competition to the Gedenkbibliothek Bibliothek in Berlin, and this now strategy of multiple pieces is serving us in terms of complex organizational ideas for the city. Instead of a single thing, there's a series of things that accommodate hugely complex urban circumstance. Starting 90, the work I showed, 5 to 15 people, let's say, in the studio. And starting in 90, we're probably at 25, and the office is institutionalizing to some degree. I have kind of all the kind of components of an office, and we're still losing money. That comes 10 years later. You guys, young guys, it's a slow go, guys. You can do better as a postman until you're about 45. No offense to postmen. It takes a while. And I'm teaching, and my wife, who does all the finances, of course, in my household, just sends me out to do a lecture gig or something. Said, Tom, you gotta get some money, we're broke, and do another lecture. And but we're starting to get kind of consistent work, and this is kind of our first large kind of villa up in Santa Barbara, and these are the drawings and the models, and we're now getting very much interested in land and the digging into the site, et cetera. And we're still doing these abstract models, which I'm going to show you much later, that keep developing. And then we were invited for a project in Japan, and it's a golf course. And now we're taking this idea of ground, and we're digging. The building is all pushed in the ground except for one little piece, and it's kind of holding the site. And it's being very much influenced by Heiser and Turrell and the earth artists. They're having a huge influence on me. And I'm looking more at the art world than I am in the architectural world. And I'm fascinated by double negative, and he's subtracting instead of building, and I'm an architect and thinking about building, and I'm going, oh, very, very interesting that this idea of cutting the earth, et cetera, and you build an architecture by using a tractor instead of building it with traditional materials. And then this was leading us to, again, other competitions, and we're still drawing. And to me, the drawings are both connected and disconnected to the work. And for a long time, I sold them, and I made a living also through the drawings. And there's this two different worlds that operates in terms of the drawings that are autonomous again as drawings. And then a competition again for a theater, which is now digging, and it's getting much more complicated, but it's about the earth. And then we got our first maybe real project. If you understand, architecture is a social art form. And it's a school in the eastern part of LA. And I ended up with this actually incredibly interesting, the superintendent of schools that actually let us do this, let's say. The little piece on the upper left, that's the first thing I showed him. That's kind of just shaping the land. And I say, we're not going to do a building. We're just going to kind of shape the land and kind of stuff the school in it. And it's going to be didactic, and it's going to be part of an educational experience. And then at this point, we were getting slightly broader, and I was getting less interested in formal design and more interested in what does architecture do in the world? Can it shape behavior? Can it change the world? Can it actually engage in the world? And what I was interested in, and I've been interested in education my whole life, is how can we affect the educational process? And I was aware that the school would be the largest single thing that would affect a student, that we get the biggest thing to deal with. And as the student looks at this, he would have to start thinking whether it's geometry, mathematics, ecology, et cetera, because it doesn't look like a normal building. And he scratched his head. And it was really interesting because we had the hardest time getting it by the teachers because they thought we were overshooting the students. And I remember driving home with my project architect going, we overshot the teachers. The students were fine. And it's funny, as a joke, I've always, 5 to 17 is my best client. They get it. Then they start becoming encumbered with what they think architecture should be, and it becomes more status versus enhancement, right? It's more about a status symbol, and it's not, they no longer start looking at things in terms of their interest and if it provokes ideas and if it actually takes you someplace. And it was really true with this building. And then right after that, we won a competition in Austria, and we built a bank. And again, this is a real symbol that is still, for me, really powerful. I'm 45 years old now, maybe, and first big building. This is a bank in the most conservative country in Europe, Austria, in the south of Austria, the most conservative district of Austria, and a bank. Never once did we discuss architecture formally. It works, it's on budget, it was built on time, et cetera. I couldn't build this building in this country to save my life. Not possible. And at this point, I recognized I was an American architect, and I was differentiating myself from my Japanese friends and from my European friends, and that we're allowed to do this normally because they're seen as artists. And here we're part of a business community. It's a much, much tougher slog. And here's the interior, and again, and it's now moving into performance, and it's moving into city making. And again, the building technology is moving. And then in the corner here, can you see the computer drawings on the screen? Okay, now the computer's entering the office, and it's about to change the world. It's 96, maybe 97. And I'm I'm drawing T-square, right? Drawing with a pencil, et cetera. And you're limited by that. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at these drawings to one of the young people in the office and go, uh-oh, it's over. I cannot myself conceive of something that I'm looking at in this drawing, right? And it's going to change this forever. And I recognized it very quickly, and then one day, the mail lines got sent to a friend of mine in Japan, and we went computer, and it was a tough year, but it changed everything, and we're still in that process, and now it's 20 years ago. And then right after that, we get another bank, the same client in Udine, Italy, and we're now connecting ground, infrastructure, building, et cetera, and we're making a new ground, and you kind of walk in this new ground, and it allows you to kind of organize the site in a very interesting way, which has to do with how the site and the building kind of interact and how movement takes place in the bank. And it's getting to be much more complex in terms of city making. We're making kind of little villages. And then, again, one of these non sequiturs, this Korean fellow walks in the door and wants us to do a little tower, 13-story tower in Seoul, Korea, and he's a clothes designer. But the tower's kind of done. There's a skin, and we're scratching our heads. Should we even do this? What's the job? And I'm using the Dine robe, so we're going to do the clothing without the person, right? And try to make something out of it. And we're using this wrapping idea, which comes from a combination of origami in terms of their culture, and Issey Miyake, the designer, in terms of the clothing itself, and the notion of kind of the thickness and the quality of the skin. And we now are working computer, and we can organize it, and we can draw it and think about it, and actually make it through this process. And we end up with this, and we're looking at something that's differentiated. As you go to different parts of the city, it keeps looking like a different thing. And it has very different qualities now that we really can't draw, that the computer gives us photographic abilities because we're using translucencies and transparencies, et cetera. So again, the drawings and the buildings are starting to look more like our drawings that come from a computer thing. And then this is a reference point. Competition in Nara in Japan, and those pieces on top are the models, and we have 6 weeks, which is typical for competition. And it took us a week just to make one of these pieces that was part of the idea, and we couldn't do it. Our technology wasn't there. And here we are, 5 years later, I'm working with the elliptoid again, and on the computer now I can move it at will, and I can do it in seconds, like this, right? And the computer's now allowing us to kind of go forward and produce much more complex things. And today, this is absolutely commonplace. A crooked line and a straight line are equal. Computer does not care. The manufacturer doesn't care, because he just gets a drawing that shows exactly how it's made mathematically. You're going to see that later on. And so here we are, and we can now shape it, turn it into a building, make it into a section in traditional ways, and we can model it. And we were the first people to buy Z-Corp. And it's working at night, making these things, and they're no longer aesthetic. They're just pure information, three-dimensionally, and they're incredibly precise, and they give us enormous information, and they're equal to about 4 people. That's not even fair. Most of the stuff you couldn't even make, actually, because we're now making forms that are not makeable by hand, right? It takes technology to make them. And this is where we are in architecture and have been now for at least 15 years. And so now we could look at it as an object, as a rendering. We could put it on the site and look at it, et cetera. And it's all the same model, right, as we work with this. And it's going to go all the way through working drawings, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes. And then the computer is giving us the CAT scan on the top. I'm now looking at 100 sections, and I set it up at 10 o'clock at night, and I come in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. I look at 100 sections and just use those like a CAT scan to understand the thing I made through section. And I'm making these more and more complex things. But another thing took place. I can crawl in them. I can sneak in it and walk around and look at it. I'm still moving into this other world. I'm used to making drawings, plan section, elevation, getting it in my brain. I kind of know what it looks like. Nobody else does, right? Or you do a rendering, which is kind of primitive, et cetera. And now I can walk through them. And then we're now in Taipei doing a design center with this funny little leftover building. And we're now taking organizational ideas, and then these multiple systems. And we can apply that to the site and make it coherent and draw plans of it. And everything is going to be different. I'm producing an organization now where there's nothing similar. It's like the walk I took through the woods to get here. There's no longer a Cartesian. There's no longer the rigor of one increment. Everything happens in its organic way, and I can make that happen. And so when you walk through this thing, everything's different. I can look at it in terms of my own modeling, and I can build it, and it's one constant flow, because the construction comes directly out of those drawings. And there's not one section that's the same. It's all differentiated. And then other things happen. I'm asked to be in a show in Rotterdam, and we do this piece that's moving, and we were kind of playing with this idea. This thing opens and closes. It's in this space, and it opens up and closes, but it takes place over an hour. And so I was trying to separate slow and fast food people. If you didn't slow down enough, you missed the whole thing, and you'd have to be patient enough or live in biological time versus media time. And then below it was our work. And then out of this, the Charleroi Dance Company saw it, and we made a stage for ballet for a dance company, and it opened in Venice 2 years later. And the idea was the environment moves and the human moves. So the two are working together. And the environment initiates movement, the dancer initiates movement of building, and it's this connection between architecture and the human character. And then we got our first big job, and now there's going to be another kind of shift in the studio. And we're now going to be perceived at the next kind of level. And it's a 1.2 million square feet. And it's the Center for Caltrans, which is the Department of Transportation that does the freeways. And it's going to be very much about public space. And Los Angeles, which itself is a long conversation, and a city that doesn't have public, or doesn't have really a pedestrian kind of idea. So we were kind of preceding that as we built this kind of very dynamic space. And it was made for film and kind of modern technology that had to do with the nature of Los Angeles. And then we were using people in the facade as an element that activated it. And then again, these jumps. Now I'm off to Madrid in a social housing. And what I'm going to get interested in is challenging the form. And it starts with a block, like a typical office block, and we're going to change it and say, no, way too institutionalized, very unhuman way to put people to live. They have children and families, and we're going to change the type, and we're going to develop something that has a social increment and a lower scale, and it's going to be connected to housing versus office or a workplace. As we start this century, we now have a continuity. There's now 50, 60 people in the office, and we're starting to get a continuous amount of large work. And what's going to change is we're going to move from design to something much more tactical, that the work now is going to become strategical. So when we start San Francisco, we'd not even finished our contract, and there was all kinds of newspaper articles that bad boy Tom Main, radical firm amorphous, et cetera, coming up to muss up our city. And we sat down and discussed how we're going to approach the project. And we were only going to talk about public space, the workspace, the public space in terms of the courtyard, the workforce and environment. And we knew we would be in total alignment with a certain kind of liberalism in this city, and that's how we went to Barker. And we were starting now to change the whole direction of the firm and locate architecture within the broader political, cultural, social, economic kind of structure of the place we're at. And it was necessary to work at this kind of scale. And we produced this, and we put a park on the 11th floor, and it has a Terrell piece in it. And we put a daycare center on the floor instead of a lobby, a traditional lobby, because 55% of the workforce are women, and X amount of those had kids, so they could visit their kids all day. And we took the cafeteria out of the space and put it into the plaza. And we went to work on completely redefining this and gave it a very kind of elegant, it's the major federal building in San Francisco, gave it an elegant kind of entry, and then a big, big lobby, a 6-story lobby that has the elegance that talks about the US of A and kind of the major building, the federal building in San Francisco. And it's facing the 7th Court of Appeals, which is the most important other building in San Francisco. And it has this major space. And it's raw, tough, concrete, forever. It's there for 200 years. By the way, we were building these things for nothing. This is $250. I've never showed you a project that's not an inexpensive building. Doesn't come, and that's back to this country again. And we know how to make the skin. It's gonna be the first tall building with no air conditioning. And we have the kind of capability, and if you look at the little graph, one building, this one building powers 600 homes, which is more or less 2,000 people. And then right after that, we're getting other projects in universities, and we're now in Cincinnati, and we're building this huge complex, which is academic space and the main sports facility, the main E facility, and housing. And we're starting to build this really, really complex thing. And now we have the technology to do it. We're way, way kind of advanced, and we can make these super, super complex things, and we can draw them and figure them out, and take what are really ordinary buildings and make them somewhat extraordinary through the technology that's taken place in architecture. And the connections here are just immensely complicated. It's a very big building. It's a little piece of a city. And we have the ways of doing this. And we're producing, again, varied, diverse exterior space that's city-like. I'm trying to build villages, but I'm doing it in one office, shorter period of time, et cetera. And we get all these different kind of possibilities within this one complex of spatial types, like you would when you're walking through a town that's been developed over 100 years, and there's a series of accidents and happenstantial things that happen that just give you the variety that make our city so interesting. And that takes place, and it moves into the interior, because again, we have these vast, vast spaces having to do with the sports complex and the relationship between inside and outside. And then we brought probably, I guess that'd be another marker, one of the most kind of odd projects that could come to our firm, because I guess we could all agree at this point that the work is, it's not conventional in the conventional sense. And we won a competition through the courthouse, and Judge Hoga, my client, wanted upper left, and we visited Cass Gilbert, And I said, no fucking way. Well, let's talk. And we spent some time, and we're going to build this. And it's loaded with the roots of classical stuff. The piano nobile, the stair, the court, on and on. But it took us a year and about 100 reiterations, looking at 30 of them, right? And a huge dialogue that ended up using the Tao of fishing, and that's again a 3-hour story, as a logic. And I was trying to prove to him that any logic can make architecture. It's not what you think it is in a straightforward sense. It has nothing to do with function. Function leads you nowhere. You have to have a broad, formal idea that takes you to an idea that accommodates function. And it worked because we both operate off of history and we both operate off of logic, and we couldn't go further without that. Oh, I also took him to Europe. And I showed him a Nouvelle courthouse in Nantes, and I showed him the courthouse in Bordeaux with Richard Rogers, and he immediately got it. What he got is architects there actually have a voice. That's why I took it, not to look at the buildings. They have a voice, right? And if I fought for anything my whole life, is just to have a voice. That's all I want, right? And so here we are working with the facade, and again, we're working now in ways that I could have never worked before. We're working with the skin and this kind of floating, open-ended thing. And we were battling it out in terms of constitutional law. Him, literal, fixed constitution, me, open-ended, of course. And we're going back and forth in terms of the symbol of this thing. And at one point, we were going to etch the Constitution, the Bill of Rights on the building, and everybody in the community was going to put up a letter so they had ownership. We couldn't make that work. And then we developed kind of this, and it's going to be a piano nobile, like a classical building, with a piece on top. But it's going to be kind of flowing. And you're going to, again, go up the stair in a classical way. And this public space, that's now the interior is part of the exterior. And as you enter it, and it's going to guide you to the courtrooms. And at some point, you're going to look in the door of one of the courts, and you're going to see a kind of hint of something inside, and it's this. And when you get inside, you understand the exterior. You now understand it's nothing more than the kind of the flowing form that goes around 8 of these courthouses. And the courthouse alone would be an hour conversation. We spent 2 months on the wood chair in terms of its moderate comfort, middle America, puritanical, formal, etc. Again, we could go forever in terms of the nuance of the nature of what that bench is and how you should feel in the courtroom, and in terms of a classical sense. And we divided the thing, and it came out of our thing with the light down the middle divides prosecution and defense, and we're joking with the guillotine and the stiletto, and then I'm placing him with a light behind him, just about like he's a religious figure, which he is, and on and on. And yet we're holding it, we're circling it. We want to make it very comfortable and very focused, right? And in terms of the wood selection, and this is a guy that was very specific. I mean, he's looking at every detail of the wood, the color of the wood. He wants to be involved in everything. And then we have another show in the Pompidou, and we're inventing kind of an idea to see it. We make this glass plate, and we kept the room empty, and everything is in the plate. And you have to kind of crouch down to see the work. And then that project, so here we are with these non sequiturs, a show in Paris. One of the head urban people in Paris sees it, and I get invited to the competition in La Défense in Paris out of that show. And it's this non-site, this huge building that we're going to build, 2-point-something million square feet. And again, it's where these connections take place in architecture, small to large to medium to different types of work that are really fascinating. And we're going to go to work on this project, a model in the office, and it's right next to the Grand Arch at the edge of La Défense. Incredibly kind of interesting kind of project. And again, like the Korean building that we're working on, you see it from different ways and it looks different. I'm building something that as you turn on it, it's not the traditional extruded building that always looks the same. It keeps reinventing itself. And sometimes it's actually 4 buildings, right? And sometimes it's 2 buildings, etc. And it completely recontextualizes. You see it, you keep seeing a different thing. And well, here's the model of it, and I'm looking at a Frank's building. I was here about, I don't know, 6 months ago in the Cartier. Anybody been to the not Cartier, the Louis Vuitton? Wow, if you have a chance, really, really amazing piece of work. A culmination of, I don't know, whatever, 60, 70 years of his life. And then the interior, and we interiorized the Eiffel Tower. The building had to be a couple centimeters shorter than the Eiffel Tower. That's the rule of Paris. So it was just under 300 meters. And here's the interior, and it's a 22-story entry space, which is seen as exterior. And now performance is huge. Coming out of San Francisco, we're making a skin that's making the building an extremely environmentally friendly building. And we have now abilities to take every panel and tell you when we can optimize it, how it works, et cetera. Like we're designing a Tesla. We're at that level. And we're building design, we're detailing pieces early on in this game to prove that we can cost model it and we can make it work, et cetera. And we're building prototypes that have to do with allowing the client to kind of allow us more and allow us to proceed. And we're doing light studies in terms of its night sequence. And the idea was that you're going to see it as a kind of a sketch, as if we're drawing that form, right, as it's seen at night. And then we're doing the Caltech building. I'll take you through this really quickly. We're starting to make spaces that you've never seen before because we can, we have this ability now with a computer just to kind of move particles through space. We're using a cloud chamber and we're just kind of pushing through this space to make this thing. And this is the public space that takes you up 3 floors. And it's literally came from a cloud chamber, just blowing parts across the space and modeling it and then turning it into a building. And we end up with this. And then kind of right after that, we're starting in New York and we're building Cooper Union. And it's a building about the public, it's about education, and it's gonna be very active in the street, and it's gonna be very idiosyncratic. And again, I don't think I've used the word before, everything I've done is interested in enigma, in mistakes, in errors, in the idiosyncratic, something that's particular to this building that you haven't seen before, like the human character. The face you remember is specific to that face, and I'm fascinated with that specificity, not similarity. I'm making things, they're about human beings, they're about us, and I want to make them, and it doesn't matter whether you like them. I could care less whether you like them or not, right? They need to be compelling and memorable, and for me, I'm as interested in things I dislike or things that I find kind of ugly. It might be the most interesting, compelling things I know, but there's nothing to do with kind of beauty in a traditional sense. And then we all have really, really different ideas of beauty. There's no such thing as beauty. And a lot of them are kind of very mechanical that some people would find very kind of distasteful, and other ones are kind of soft or flowery, and again, another group would find them tasteful or distasteful. And I'm really interested in that broad idea of what we call beauty. And I'm now drawing, and it's a computer, and we make this. This is the public space. And it's a, hopefully memorable. It's something that as you occupy, you haven't seen it before. And it's it does what it has to do. It connects architects and artists and engineers and allows them to talk, and we're making it. And we spent a year and have one person spent a year designing it and modeling it and making it. And it ends up being this. And it's a social space. It's a stair that goes up 3 space, and people in the building, only half of them use the elevator, and the whole idea is people move and talk, and it's like the Met, or it's like the New York Library. It's really not a stair, it's a social conduit. And then we're back to nature. And we got hired by a group in Shanghai to do a research center. And I'm gonna throw something in now that I just had to show you. I'm still drawing, and I'm working on art pieces, and I'm trying to find ideas that connect to this notion of a controlled randomness and kind of a complexity. And this is a series of pieces that I'm just about completed that are just, they're both searching for things in my architecture, and they're in their own right, they're whatever they are, they're drawings, paintings. And then here I can show 3 of them and how they're gonna connect to a plan. So out of this comes an idea of these different kind of random pieces that are coming together, and I'm still interested in the forest and the diversity of a forest. And here's kind of what's gonna be kind of a plan, and it's gonna turn into now something more architectural, and I can make a plan and show the different elements of how it's made. It's gonna do that, and then it's gonna turn into a plan, and then it's in the ground. It's gonna be all about landscape. I'm literally constructing landscape, an augmented landscape. And funny, on our walk here, where's Dylan? Dylan, you here? Our conversation, walking through, and I'm going, this is really one of the most perfect landscapes I've ever seen that looks like a forest. And of course, it's an absolutely manipulated English garden, right? Everything's been taken care of. And this is somehow connected to that. I'm producing something a little more abstract but it's an augmented landscape, but it's performative. Inside of it is building. You use it like the school. And again, I can model it, and I can model it structurally, and I can build it, and we keep doing it, and there it is. There's not one piece of steel that's similar. Every one is unique. Doesn't matter, and it was perfect. Made in Beijing, shipped down to Pudong. And I can make these shapes, this kind of language, and from the early thinking about it to the construction is a kind of a single movement. And so here we are, kind of a piece of it that goes over the lake and the water, and everything you're looking at is building. Inside of that are meeting rooms, this room, libraries, etc., and landscape and architecture are merging. I'm trying to find a hybrid between the two. And I'm bringing the farm to the city and the city to the farm. And then, of course, with landscape, you get the dynamicism that you can't get with materials and architecture. So you get a site that's very, very varied. And again, the language I can invent now is this completely open thing that I'm semi in control of as I make this thing. And I'm producing a little town with piazzas and open spaces and spaces between, which are the accidents again, and places where the corridor, it's a 300-meter long complex, where you move out into the garden, back into the building, through the mounds as bridges, other elements that act as structure and lighting, the entrance to the hotel component, the nose of that piece you started with that's hanging over the river with a glass floor, so you're on top of the water is your floor. It's 20 feet below. Tea room, part of the aesthetic facility, kind of entry to that. Again, part of the recreation. And then the last couple of years. And so now when a restaurant comes back, we're doing it for play, and it's really not architecture anymore, it's installation. And I'm treating it like an art piece in a gallery, and it's graphics. This is Clyde Frazier, a basketball player in New York, and we're using him as the material. And he's kind of famous for fashion as well as being a good basketball player. And it's all made of graphics, and we went through his closet and picked all the suits we liked and kind of, I don't have that many things. Part of it is all basketball, and it is about his basketball career, and the other part is about his fashion, and we chose what we liked, et cetera, and we made that into the building. And then in Dallas, we're now back to landscape, and we're constructing site. And we can do that now from that to the plan. And again, we're using huge numbers of reiterative models. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of models of every project. And again, it's moving from the sketch to something very precise, right? And we end up with this. And a courtyard and the movement system is taking you away from the building instead of into the building, so you keep moving closer to the city. And as you come up, you get a view of the city, and it's about the connection of the urban connection and a very non-urban site, and it's about landscape. And it's about kind of movement as you go from the main collective space up to this vertical space. And playful pieces of landscape that are now whimsical, that are floating, and kind of this huge vertical space, which is the connective tissue. And then you get to the top, and you get the view of the city. And we should have been in the city. It's just how the life works. So we brought the city to you. And we saw this as a connected institution. And then everything is transparent. And so when you get to the elevators, we lined them up. The elevators move, and all of a sudden you realize that you can see all the way through to 4 elevators. And then the skin, again, we have a technology. We're making things now. We're building things. We're inventing products. We're in Gates Construction making the skin. And we made it for nothing. And it's quite complicated. And this is the next phase of where we are right now. This ad came out of Architectural Record 6 months before the building was done. And my wife, who's an MBA, of course, asked me at dinner, Tom, of course you have a royalty on that. Oh, of course I do not have a royalty on that. And we're working on products. And that's a huge, huge direction for architects today. We should be making products and be part of the world at that level. And it's absolutely kind of a necessary direction of kind of where we're going. And then, again, I'm not going to have to talk about these things. They're really kind of obvious at this point. That's the idea. We're doing the Emerson School of Theater in Los Angeles, and it's housing, and it's their Los Angeles facility of a Boston place, and it's housing and academic space, and it's going to be part Cartesian and part this other language, and it's going to be all about space between, compressed urban space, and we're bringing kind of pieces of Boston, where I've lived for a while, to this environment. And it's, again, very urban. You're looking at the Hollywood sign on one side, and you're going to look out to the city on the other. And it's all going to be about movement and connection to people, et cetera. And all of this kind of compressed urban space that looks like accident, things that are just being pushed next to each other that make this very different kind of organization. And then we can make it. We have now ways of making these things, and they're incredibly simple, and it takes us right to the shop. So we're in Zahner Construction in Kansas City that we were discussing earlier at dinner, and it looks more like a kind of a fragment of an airplane than it does a building, and it's the least expensive, most economical way to make this thing. And we're working with Zahner and kind of making this that allows us to do that. And it's, again, a very, very inexpensive building, not an expensive building at all. And then the skin, ditto. We can make a completely random kind of piece out of a series of elements we invent that get cut out of a sheet of plywood. And then we can do a map, and it shows the contractor exactly which one to put where. And we're out at the site explaining, this is how you make it, and we get that. And then at the very end, a building under construction in China right now, it's a 350-meter tower, and we've remoted the lift. Oh, there it is, a couple months ago. Funny, when you're like a quote design architect and kind of an artist architect, people have you kind of pegged. And in my city, I couldn't get invited to do a tall building to save my life. And so we're doing a postcard, and we put this in it, and it's 50 meters taller than the tallest building, and we have 3 of these. And I just did another postcard with 2 more that I can't show you yet. And here it is, and it's this very slim kind of tower, and it's a lovely client that just let us do some stuff. And there it is in the office in terms of a model. What's going to happen is we remoted the elevators. You're going to come across a 30-foot glass bridge. So as you move up the building, you come across the bridge, you're 85 floors looking at the city, going to work. And that gives you a really empty workspace that you can see all the way around. There's no core, right? And it's this really, really lovely kind of diagram. And then the bottom gets thicker and has the commercial and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. And then here's the entry to the commercial space. That's going to go look up, and you actually see all the way up to the tower. And here's the entry to the office environment. And here you are crossing any number of these bridges. There's 2 bridges per floor as it goes up. And these pure glass bridges that enter you into the city again as you go to work every day. And then as you look up, you're looking up, what's over 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet, as you're seeing people coming back and forth to work. And then another just quick project in Cornell. It's their tech building. I'm not gonna, doesn't matter. And modern building on a conventional campus, but these are 21st century people. It's the Gates Hall. And they asked us to do a building that was actually a contemporary building, and we didn't have to use brick. We didn't have to make it look like a new old building. Another conversation, if somebody wants to ask a question, there's no such thing as old building. There's only new old buildings that are fake old buildings. And if you really love history, they would hurt your eyes. You can't find a bricklayer that can point brick. You cannot find the technology that happens in the 19th, 18th, 17th, 16th century, period. It's just fake, right? And it's absurd kind of notion that somehow this country is located in. The rest of the world, forget it. It's completely located in this country. And a fun project for tech guys. And we're trying to make the earth again become part of this thing. Other than that, super, super simple building. It has a skin again that's moving and that protects all of our buildings have double skins for environment. They're all platinum plus. And again, and then the interior and the exterior are one thing, always. And then finally, we won a competition just recently on one of the strangest buildings we ever got. It's a 400-meter hotel in Vals, a village of 850 people in the Swiss Alps, 150 kilometers south of Zurich. And we decided that we wanted to do something really minimal, and there's 2 rooms per floor. It's the tallest building in Europe. Not in London, not in Berlin, not in Frankfurt, in Vals. It's really crazy. And we get this. And now we're looking at Irwin, and we're looking at Smithson, and we're looking at this little glass, slim, slightly mirrored thing. And if I showed you the other schemes, there are all these big bulky things that didn't work. You just couldn't put a 10-story building on the site without ruining it. And we actually won it. And again, it'd be a kind of long conversation about strategy, because we knew we were going to be pummeled for the scale. And we did. All the press came out that we were absolutely absurd that we were building this. And so this is the model. And can you see the tower in that? Can you? Right in the middle? We're way down the line, and again, especially for you young guys, today you have to think strategically and tactically. And we're going, this is what's going to happen. We're going to get pummeled, and we're not going to get to build this building, right? Because they're going to say it's absurd to build a 400-meter building in a village in the Swiss Alps. And so what we're going to do in the model is we don't want to build the model of the building. It's not important. What's important is the site in that line. And so all these European press corps came, this is an opening in New York, came to pummel us and to photograph stuff, and this is what we gave them. We screwed them. They were writing huge building, and then this is the drawing they had, this is the thing they had to show. It's like, what are you talking about? It's a tiny building given the scale of the site, right? And it became super, super interesting in terms of kind of an idea, and we're probably gonna get it built, not done yet. It'll take a while, and here it is. And they have these kind of spectacular views, and it's this really, really rare opportunity. This is one of these things that comes, it's a play project. It comes once in a lifetime, where you get this really odd juxtaposition of this big, big thing in the middle of nowhere, but in fact you make it into something that there's a connection. And then the last image we showed them was this, and we probably won it based on this. It's about emotion. Why do people go to hotels? Can I tell this story? It's a weird one to end with. In the brief, there was a part of the brief that said, this should be a hotel that people go to have good sex. In 40 years of reading briefs, never got that one. And we're going, not unimportant, actually really interesting. You go to escape day-to-day life, and it's either nature or fantasy, right? And we understood that, not about architecture in the serious sense, right? It's not a housing project, right? And when we showed them this last image, they understood that we got the program. And it's not just about this little thin tower urbanistically, but it's about where we're going in terms of the experience of the hotel, which is going to be much more like the Philippe Starck model that's happened 10 years or 20 years ago in New York. And he uses over-the-topness, and he uses certain ideas, right, of what a hotel is. And with that very, I was going to say, should I end it? Yeah, I'm not going to, let's end there. I have one more, but that's the best ending. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. So shall we do a little bit of Q&A? Any questions?
I would love to answer any questions.
Okay, we've got one right here.
Thank you for that incredible talk. Would you be willing to share with us stories or a story of a memorable one that got away? A commission or an idea or a project that just wasn't the right time or place, but that has stuck with you as something that
I couldn't get built. That I couldn't get built.
Right, exactly, yes.
Oh dear, that's kind of a lot of them.
Or not.
You know, I heard Rem Koolhaas answer that, and I've actually heard several architects answer that question. Strangely enough, most of your best work doesn't get built, in your own opinion. I showed you early on a theater that was stuck in the ground. The Chiba, they were constructing, it was 1990, they were building it. And the Japanese, they don't get around. When the economy went down, they just stopped and filled the hole. A little slim tower, which I didn't show. Car Museum, which I didn't show. The Far Tower just got dumped. Probably recently, that's most architects are kind of most of them are quite generous. And it's a nice gang. And a whole bunch of them literally told me, Tom, we want you to get that one built. That's a fun one, a complex one. And missed the economy. 08 killed us. And they can't even lease it now because people don't want anything that looks extraordinary. By the way, one of the things I have to constantly apologize for when I'm doing the opening ceremony with whoever, somebody's whispering in my ear, Tom, make sure you tell them it's cheap. Cooper Union, my last thing, the president comes up to me and says, Tom, I'm going to get pummeled. I got faculty, what's for money, I need scholarships, we have all kinds of problems. Make sure you told them we build it for $600, which is $200 less than the cheapest lab building built in New York. Because our things, I think again, that's a kind of a common sense that because it looks complex, it's expensive. And I'm going, no, it's about design intelligence. I have a Tesla. It represents the problem we have with a huge amount of our industrial output in this country. It's about design. This country suffers from very antiquated thinking, both in its leadership, business, political, and technological, that we just don't make very good products, right? Everybody complains that we're losing Detroit. Why is Detroit where it is? It makes a shitty car. All of them. If you want a car, it's either German or Japanese. I've never had an American car, then I rent one, and when I rent one, it frightens me. Doesn't stop, doesn't turn, doesn't do anything. If I have a BMW, it responds like a race car, and it does what it's supposed to do, and it's a little more expensive, not really, right? And we just make kind of inferior things, right? And so when you do make something that you put some energy into, people just assume it's expensive, right? Funny, I've had a Tesla now for about a year, and it just hit me. He took the mechanics out of the car. It's really quite an invention. And I'm a car guy. I build cars and race cars and that kind of thing. And no engine, I don't count electric, no complex engine, no transmission, no drive shaft, no differential, right? None of the stuff that comes with all that stuff to cool it and heat it and blah, blah, blah. And two little electric engines that there's nothing that lasts forever and there's nothing to break, right? They're the simplest thing, and they have huge torque. My wife has a Porsche. My cars, I have it's a sedan, right? Faster than a Porsche. 0 to 30 faster than a Ferrari. He just invented something, right? And we have those guys. They're the rare ones. The Steve Jobs, the Gates, the Elon Musks. We definitely get the best. But after that, there's a gap. It's horrible. And I would have said it's a design gap. Not totally, you can't blame all the designers, but it needs leaders too, right? But it's a huge problem. Anyway, your question, yeah, tough. Because you can't, it's hard to convince people to build something that is different. Oh, connected to that question. I usually already said it in a lecture. I kind of just about said it when I talked about the Austrian building. In this country, if I'm being interviewed for a job and they ask if it's been done before, I always know what to say. Yes. If I'm in China, if I'm asked the same question, I always know exactly what to say. Of course not. I'm doing this for you. You're the first. 99.9% response, literally. I'd say 100%, right? And then I can never, never say you're the first. Just happened to me. I just got a phone call. I lost a competition for a park in LA. And the first thing they asked me, we were doing a performative park, and I was using hydroponics. And we made a park that produced enough produce that was equal to a 50-acre farm. And the first thing they asked me on the jury, has it been done before? And I said, of course. And I knew that I was going to ask that question. New Jersey, Tokyo, Singapore, rattled off the things. And I told them, this is a second-generation Tesla. You're not getting the first one, right? I would have lost the job in Shanghai or Beijing. They don't want the second generation. They're going to take the next guy. Okay, raise their hand. Who's got a better idea? And that's, I don't know, what's happening to us? It's so sad. And funny, architects, are you an architect? Architects are like social anthropologists. You get a sniff of where the world is because you deal with the business community, you deal with the political community, you deal with construction, you deal with just society in general in terms of they like or don't like things. And we're just in a really weird place right now. And we kind of dug ourselves into our own hole, and it's showing up politically, of course. And it's just really odd. And architects really are involved in this. And it has a lot to do with the question you asked. Do you get the work you want built. And I've always been kind of aggressive, and I'm totally okay. I'd rather walk away with something I'm proud of than get something I'm not proud of. And as I get older, I'm getting worse. I only want to do stuff I want to do. Otherwise, I'm totally happy walking away. And that might be a political metaphor too. We need more people that just have the courage to lose, and they're much more honored to lose and hold the high ground. Yeah. And today we seem to our world is gone the other direction for some reason. There's just no idea. The idealism is kind of gone. And any of you that are my age, I was born in the middle of it. I can't escape it. I had tons of heroes, and whether it was in cinema, in art, in cinema, or painting, clearly the political world, civil rights, the Martin Luthers, the Kennedys, I mean, it goes on and on. And you're left as a young person just full of idealism that the world can change. And it did change, and it has changed. The weird thing is, it's actually, everything going on is actually quite positive. This is a country that has this enormous kind of, its diversity is an experiment in the world, and we should be totally proud of it, right? And people seem to want to just groan today, just because we're sharing a little more. We no longer own the world, so what? I mean, nothing new. Talk to a Swede. The Swedes get all fucked up because they're the 40th largest economy in the world? Of course not. It's absurd, right? And it's affecting architecture, clearly.
Question right here.
Yes. How conscious was the development of Morphosys' language over the past few decades, and how has the computer or digital modeling and digital fabrication affected that?
Is it first one, how conscious?
Yeah, how conscious has the development of Morphosys' language been over the past
I'm not
few
even,
decades?
I don't spend any time.
If at all.
You mean the future, like where the firm is, that kind of thing? I spend no time in any strategy.
hesitant to use the
I
word
just show up to
brand.
work every day and live the present. The computer, of course, changed everything. I tried to show that. I think it was kind of just evident by the images, right? I was trying to make really brief comments, and all of a sudden, things are moving. And there are things I couldn't draw anymore, and everything I'm doing now, I couldn't even think of. I couldn't even invent them. And this is also interesting, because I'm kind of only interested in things that I can't preconceive. That keeps me going. I'm going to work and I have no idea how to solve it. I'm looking for something that I've never seen before. And that's the goal of my office. We've been doing a little work with Elon Musk, and he's got quite a crew. And you can't even get hired there if you don't believe you can get to the moon. Not a dream. To go there, you don't get hired. And he wants people that are like going somewhere and believe it. And the average age is 29. Right? And they're all hoodies and skateboarders, and which is also interesting because we have a part of this world that's the intelligence is young, and it doesn't look like the average businessman anymore, right? It's look like you want to look, and they're smart, and but it's I think a lot of the most creative people are interested in things that you can't know about. We just had a long conversation with a critic on this park we were doing in LA, and they did a public forum. We were discussing the importance that the public votes on the park, and I think it's outrageous. I could care less what the public thinks. I'm interested in something that the public doesn't even know it exists, and that's, I'm stealing that line from Steve Jobs, because he was asked that, and he said, God, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard of. Everything I'm interested in, the public would never know. It doesn't exist yet. Why would I ask the public, right? It's about leadership. I'm the one that's going to invent something that's going to take the public somewhere, and of course I'm not going to ask them. I'm interested in things they couldn't possibly even understand in terms of my own territory and my own discipline. And I'm the same way. I could care less. Why would I ask the public? I have a hard time figuring it out. I mean, it's a big enough struggle to figure it out myself. I don't know where I'm going half the time. Why the hell would I ask somebody else? And then it gets awful serious. It got a little lighter. They're just buildings. And the look should be the least important part. They have to perform. That's the important part. And architects, we don't get to play too much. I mean, they come with budgets and really tough programs, and they can't leak, and They have to be heated and cooled properly. And I mean, come on. I mean, it's really kind of a joke because the standards are very, very high in terms of the performance of how buildings work. And if anything, a lot of us are pushing to be higher. We're taking I'm building a house right now, 0 energy, 0 water. Duh. It's not that complicated to do, right? Anybody can do it if they want to do it. And then the look of it, that's my business. Well, my wife. My wife, right? And we get so overly, I don't know, buildings scare people. For some reason, I've never been able to figure it out. I learned it really early on. It's the idea that scares them. The building can't scare you, it's inert. It doesn't reach out and grab you. But it's somehow the idea that frightens people. New stuff does at this point in time. Make sense? Some people, and I don't know, we're creatures of habit, so I get it. A lot of it wants to look like a village, like it always looked. But we are kind of moving forward in the world. And they can't all look like a Tudor house. It's also going to be a really shitty Tudor house, I got to tell you, but whatever.
Question over there.
I had 2 things to mention. The first, you showed a lot of projects, but I didn't see any churches, but a lot of your spaces have a sacred quality to them. I just thought that was curious. And then the second...
Which one?
Which one?
What was curious?
Many of the spaces have a sacred quality to them, especially in the overhead. You described it as a social thing in some aspects, but I thought that was interesting. Have you done churches? I'm not familiar with any of them.
Oh, it's interesting. That's the one I missed. I mapped Chartres Cathedral on the last project that I just had to stop. In scale, it's 173 feet. Accident. Other than I've been there and it's in my brain. They're not in any way intentional. To me, the sky and the ground are kind of basic of architecture. And so they have, it's interesting, if they had sacred qualities, it's because their sacred buildings have so few of those. Churches haven't been existing for a century. But I would claim that there's no even understanding of sacred. That's going to get us in a whole other place. Religion, today, to me, religion is the problem. It's not, it has nothing to do with it.
The second thing is just about architect as a maker of products, and besides getting into a legal discussion about copywriting or intellectual property, what needs to change to allow architects to be makers of products?
You just become, like most people making things, you become more aggressive in the hands-onness of taking the responsibility of making something and producing it. And it's probably, in a lot of countries, that's how you make your living. If you're practicing in Mexico City, architecture fees are tiny, but you build. And you make your living as a contractor, building what you designed. And that's common in a huge amount of the world. It's part of the whole thing. And it makes sense, since you're the designer, that you make it. It seems like you're, of all people, you're the one that understands it most. And we went the other way, and it started with my generation, where the legal profession took over architecture. And everybody tried to do less and less to reduce risk. And it's shrunk the profession horribly. And it's starting to come back a little bit now because of the digital world, that architects are getting more involved in the construction of things. Like in our office, I showed it like in that shape piece for Cooper Union. The notion in our office, if you design it, you have to make it. We don't give other people our problems. If we're inventing it, we certainly have to know how to make it. Otherwise, what are we doing? Right? If we can't figure it out, why do we expect someone else to be able to figure it out? And I don't know, I'd have to ask architects here, but I think it's getting more and more, it's kind of Middle Ages. It's the way that things used to be done. You build things, you don't make drawings. We tell that to people too. We don't make drawings, we make buildings. We build things. And now, the drawings you're looking at, those are construction drawings. They're not sketches. When you draw a stair, it is the thing. You can't sketch it. It's only exact. Meaning it's concrete or steel or wood, or it's when you ask somebody, it is something. So you're literally building now with your drawings. That's the biggest difference probably in terms of how the digital environment is shifting the profession. That make sense? I just left the last meeting for 2 weeks into a museum. I'm looking at a structural diagram, but the lines are actually I-beams. You got to draw something, and it's steel, and it's an I-beam, and it's a certain size, and I'm 2 weeks into the project, right? Because the drawings are just real. You're constructing something.
Last question of the night right here.
Your plans are very sophisticated. How do you find workers that can follow those plans?
You know, that's interesting. It's actually simpler. We're working in the landscape project in Shanghai, and I showed you the structure. Working with good engineer firm, Bureau Happel. The stick model, we drew every stick. Every one of them is a something, right? And they connect in a certain way. And then somebody took every stick apart and draws each stick and tells you how big it is and what the angle is on the edge. And then you design a detail. Somebody just makes the stick, but they make 2,000 of them. And then they show up at the site and they bolt them or weld them together. And it's incredibly simple. Because today, I can take a crumbled up piece of paper and throw it on the floor, or a cube. It's irrelevant. Because you know how to take it apart and put it back together again, right? And because you can measure it now, because it's in digital environment, it's a 3D environment, and it's it actually radically simplifies it. We're getting back all of our stuff, feedback from our consultants. We love working with you. I always ask when I go on the site, are you okay? Meaning, are you making money? Right? And I'm not interested in taking people out of business. And they're like, that really complex piece in Cooper Union, I would have swore, kind of a low bid, taking this guy out of business. Horrible. No way. End up talking to him, he did great. Loved it. I'm going, huh, that's nice. But we just showed him how to make it stick by stick. And it's not complex. It's actually simpler. Because we know so much about how to make things now. We don't go, your problem. You cantilever out here and you tell us how to do it. No, it comes out of the shop and we know exactly how to do it. And it's even better than that because we not only know how to do it, we can tell them how much it deflects. I mean, today it's so sophisticated. We can give them the amount of deflection and we can give them the problems that are going to take place. We have a stair going up in New York right now. It's this huge, huge cantilever. And it's quite complicated. And it's being made in Toronto. And before they can put the skin on it, they actually load it and measure it again because it's going to deflect. We think 1/4 of an inch, but it might be 1/2 an inch. And the methods today are so sophisticated that you're protecting them. And it's going the other way. It's getting simpler. Everything I showed you was a low budget. I didn't show you the building that cost over maybe $5 a foot. Dallas was $450. The Emerson School was $360. That thing. And not expensive. Not the cheapest building you get, but they're definitely not expensive buildings. No, the technology changed everything.
Well, Tom, we appreciate all of your thoughtful answers and sticking through to the end. And thank you all for coming tonight. And thank you again
Thank you.
to Tom.